This is a show that's been built for people in the performance marketing trenches, those media buyers, those creators, the founders, the data analysis, every single person that is working in performance marketing. We've brought together people from our network that are experts in performance marketing so that we can ask them all the questions about how they're winning, but also how all the mistakes that they've made along the way and how to avoid those mistakes or just making sure they get the best lessons out of them. My name is Leanne,
I'm Paco.
and we're going to get into it. So, the first question I have for you, Paco, is why another performance marketing podcast when there's already so many of them out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, there are so many good ones out there, but as a marketer, this is my passion. I have so many great conversations that I wish I could share with other marketers when I go to conferences, when I'm just on calls with people in our network that we're working with. I wanted to find a way to bring that knowledge out to people that don't have these giant networks and haven't been in the space long enough because it's really hard. The industry moves so fast that, like, unless you're in the trenches and you're talking to people, you're not learning the new tips, the new tricks, the new pitfalls to avoid. And I think it's important, as this industry evolves with AI coming out, making everything faster and changing everything so quickly. I think it's important to give people resources to figure out what's going on. Plus, I just like talking marketing. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. On that AI topic, I actually wanted to speak a little bit more about that. So, what AI is probably the biggest conversation that we're seeing in probably every single industry right now. How AI is changing the industry, how the job market's going to change, how people's roles are going to change. But I want to talk a little bit more about that. So, we all know AI is changing our industry, and there's so many tools available now. But what is the conversation that's not being had about AI? We hear, you got to do this, you got to do that, but I feel like there's like a big gap of people where we know what to do, but maybe we don't know how to execute on it or we don't know how to use it to our advantage.
I think a lot of it is a lot of shiny object syndrome, right?
Yeah.
It's so new to the market, and it almost reminds me of like the initial crypto boom, right? Like everybody was jumping on it. There are a million altcoins. People are getting rich and looking at all these crazy shit coins, right?
Mhm.
But in reality, a ton of people lost a lot of money making that. And right now, there's so many people, it's so easy to put out new software and tools that every day I'm seeing something new on my feed, right? And you just can't test them. And I think people really need to focus on becoming a master at the skill before moving to the next thing. And I think that's really the issue, that things are just coming at us too quickly, right? So if you're a creative strategist, I would focus on, you know, UGC, AI UGC, and creating AI videos that look real, that don't look like AI slop. And then refining that workflow so a video doesn't take you 4 hours to make, right? Because you want diversity, but you also need volume to make these
Ex-
algorithms.
exactly. Like we just attended a conference and there was a lot about using AI for UGC content, but as someone who's never been more on the creative side, that's so broad. And I know there's all these tools out there, but I feel like a lot of people don't know how to use them properly to make that content look real and not like an AI created UGC video, which is what we want to avoid. So I think there's a lot that we could discuss on this AI topic. And I'm sure that we're going to keep discussing it every single episode just because it's such a big thing to be discussing in every single industry. It's brand new and it's coming right at us. Um,
Yeah,
the,
absolutely.
the,
I've spent a lot of time with these tools, and I'm finding myself even having that same issue where it's like, all right, well, I've got 6 LLMs. Which one do I use?
yeah,
All of them? Is that going to be a waste of time? So I think that providing some direction would be really helpful.
exactly. It's almost so overwhelming that you kind of want to just look away, which is what I've been doing a lot. And that's probably not the answer either. Um, I have one last question just to summarize our podcast a little bit better. What does in the gray mean to you?
So in the gray is always a term that I've heard, especially when I was doing a lot of affiliate based marketing. Um, it's not black hat, right? You're not cloaking, you're not running, you know, casino ads or anything like that. But you're also not running 100% white hat, right? You're going as close to the line of compliance as you possibly can to put that sizzle on your ad, right? Like you got to sell the sizzle. That's our whole job. So you have to entice these people, and sometimes you have to walk in between that black hat and that white hat and be right in the gray. I think that's really where that name comes from.
Yeah, for sure. Since I've started working in this industry over 7 years ago, it's been probably the most common sentence I've ever heard. And it's really just like walking that fine line, understanding compliance, understanding the rules, but never crossing over onto the other side of that fine line. And I think that's like the golden region, whatever we want to call it, of where miracles happen in our industry, where people are really making money, where the creatives are killing it, the campaigns are killing it, the data is working for you. But you got to stay in that gray, because once you cross over to the black side, you're going to be in trouble. So I think that's
Yeah,
what
and
encapsulates us.
I thought, I know some guys that work black hat, and it's not to say they can't work, and it is a methodology, right? I started in black hat, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of cat and mouse, and I just find that stability breeds longevity in your success. So that's why I've always tried to focus on the gray rather than the black, even though black is generally quicker money.
Yeah. I also believe, like you said, black is quicker money, but gray is probably something that will last longer and work for a longer amount of time and just provide a little bit more safety and peace of mind, which is something I like to. I like to live in that kind of mindset. So
Yeah,
that's my
absolutely. Absolutely. I got tired of watching my accounts go down every month.
yeah. It's a lot of work.
I don't know if I could have done that for 12 years straight. A couple of years it was all right, but like 12 years, I really enjoyed like finding stability, and I think that's one of the big things that people are looking for now with all these algorithm changes. Is there's no, it doesn't seem like there's stability, and trying to
Yeah.
figure out how to fix that.
Stability is key. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. Okay, now that you know a little bit more about our podcast and what we're here to accomplish, I think it's time you learn a little bit more about your hosts, Paco and I. I'm going to do some quick questions just so that you can get to know us a little bit and our backgrounds before we move on to interviewing our guests and learning a lot more about these experts in the industry. So, Paco, what is the moment that you knew this was the career you wanted?
So, funny story. I was on my honeymoon. We were in Italy, and I told my wife, I have campaigns running. I have to. And lost her mind. And I was working, but not my normal amount of work. Obviously, I'm on my honeymoon, right? And by the end of it, I had made more money in that 15 days I was in Italy, not really working as much than I had at any job before in like 6 months of work there. And I was like, well, shit, I can travel, I can make my own hours. As long as I get it done and I'm creative, the sky's the limit, and I'm the master of my own destiny. And that freedom really sold me. And it was like, okay, I think I can do this forever.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that. For me, I wasn't on my honeymoon or anything like that, but I was actually working after I graduated school and all that. I was working as a project manager at an IT consulting company. So a totally different field, like completely unrelated to marketing. I wasn't even doing any marketing, although I had done some marketing at jobs I was doing while I was studying. And I ended up falling on this job and I got started in the search arbitrage performance space. So a little different than lead generation, but still very similar to what we're doing now. And at first, I didn't really understand what I was doing. I was on the project management team, I was helping with operations. And day by day, I learned a lot about this industry. I knew nothing. I was entering basically blind. And I just realized how, like you said, people can travel, people can live their lives as long as they're still putting in the time to make sure their campaigns are running, they're not losing money, their creatives are constantly being refreshed. And there's work that has to be done, but you can still live this life of flexibility and enjoy whatever it is that you enjoy doing, whether it's traveling or whatever your hobbies are. You could just take that time, get your work done, and live your life at the same time. And I was able to see how much money that company was generating through a big team of media buyers and creators and just all the different teams, how they work together and they come together to create something. I loved it. And I realized that's exactly the type of team I want to be on, that I want to run, that I just want to be a part of, because there's so much opportunity and there's also a lot of freedom, which is exactly what I'm looking for. I love working, but I also love being able to live my life. So that is the moment that I knew that this was for me. And ever since then, I haven't looked back. And that's also what hooked me. That was going to be my next question to ask you, Paco. But I kind of answered it myself before I even asked the question. Is what hooked me is just seeing everyone work together as a team to bring in all the different aspects that are a campaign and the data side and the site and the landing page and all the tracking and all those things. But what hooked you to marketing?
Uh, I think it was like the ability to create, right? Like I've always been, even as a kid, I always liked to like take computers apart and put them back together and like build things. And buying media and like building creatives, you get an instant gratification when you run a creative and that you built and you like understand the psychology of your audience and you can see, oh, I sold somebody, right? Like I converted them.
Yeah.
Or creating a really cool funnel that, does certain things to uh, get better quality, or creating a chatbot that calls people and qualifies them. It's really the sky's the limit, and your imagination is the only limitation. If you have the right tools, right? And as I've progressed, I've gotten lucky enough to work with some great developers and things like that. And so now I'm at the point where shit, anything I want, I can really do. It's just a really cool feeling to know that like you have that freedom to create whatever you want for people.
Yeah, it's super empowering. I could relate to that, and I think that's the best part of all of this is just learning all the different aspects of the business along the way. And now you could figure it out, which I'm a figure it out kind of girl. So I love that. The last question I have is, what did you get wrong early on? Like, what was a mistake you made that you will never forget?
Early on, I didn't have an easy go of it when I started. It took me about a year to really take off. Um, but I think it was like trying to copy everyone else. Most of my ads were carbon copies of what I saw in the ads library and not doing enough research on my audience. So I was essentially writing the ad based on what I thought people wanted, not what they actually wanted, not understanding their pain points. So once I figured out the psychology behind it, that's when things really started to change.
Yeah. Yeah. A mistake I made early on was probably trying to do a little bit of everything without really understanding. Like, at one point, I was helping on the creative side and also on the media buying side, and I was helping develop our landing page and test out different features. But I was too new. I felt like I had a lot to learn. So I was trying to learn on the go. But at the end of the day, after a couple months, I realized like it's important to let the experts do what the experts are good at. So we had an expert creative person, we had an expert media buyer, and I should have learned from them instead of, just trying to do it myself. And then once you learn from them, then you're able to go in. But I was just making too many mistakes at the beginning because I didn't know what I was doing. And I had to learn from everyone. Like I said, I came in blind. So that was my lesson, is don't just try and do it all, because sometimes you can't. You need to learn first.
Yeah. But it sounds like we had very different experiences in the beginning. Like you came into a company that was like established with departments and all of these things.
Yeah.
Um, when I started with Concussion Media, I was pretty much the only media buyer. There was another guy in our office, Parag Shabal, who's an OG in the affiliate space. I mean, the guy's a savant, but I was lucky enough to train under him, and all I did was buy media, and he basically Miyagi me, right? Like he made me paint the fence and wax on, wax off. I mean, I started from organizing his 300 credit cards for all of his ad accounts, right?
Yeah.
So I understood, okay, the basics of an ad account, the basics of finding new ad accounts because we were running black and how to procure ad accounts to use and lose without like running out of accounts and things like that. So I really got to learn from the ground up, but it definitely was not easy.
Yeah. That's something we can both relate on. Maybe our experiences are different, but one thing I'll say is it's not easy. And I think that's something that I want to focus on throughout our interviews with guests is doing all of this is not easy. There's a lot of mistakes you're going to make. There's a lot of lessons you're going to learn. But at the end of the day, once you figure it out, it is a very great feeling. And like you mentioned, now you could kind of do it all, which is probably one of the best feelings, one of the best takeaways you can get from a job.
Yeah, I agree. And there's I think a lot of it has to do with all the gurus out there that just sell the dream, and not the work.
Yeah.
Because it's not a get rich quick scheme.
No.
It's a grind. It's a real job. You got to put in the hours. You got to put in the time. You got to learn. You got to sacrifice. But if you do it, it's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to grind and you'll get there, which I think that is the key takeaway. Okay, Paco, I'm going to be going ahead and asking you some rapid fire questions, some things that are hot takes or just your opinions on some controversial topics in the industry right now. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. What's the worst? What's the worst campaign you ever ran and why?
The worst campaign I ever ran. Um, we ran an auto insurance campaign once. And the reason I find it was the worst campaign, we're kind of a black hole for data. Um, the company did not give us any feedback on what was going on with as far as quality, as far as conversion rates. Their tech just wasn't there. And they would send us a CSV weekly on like our performance. So we were always operating behind, and I just find that you can't run a campaign unless you have data,
Yeah.
right? You like need to understand what's going on and be able to act on it rapidly.
Yeah.
And without that, now for our agency, unless you have a CRM and can give us feedback, we're not going to. It's just not worth it to us. It's a waste of time.
I think that's probably one of the most common problems I've seen across the different companies I've worked in is just there's not enough data, the data's too slow, and you can't act fast enough to make good decisions. Moving on to the next question. What is the most overrated metric, in your opinion, in performance marketing?
The most overrated metric, I would say, is probably your CPMs. Um, you can have. I've had campaigns where I have extremely high CPMs, but my cost per click is really low. And because yes, you can use it as a good gauge, but it's not always accurate, and it's kind of a black hole, right? Like CPMs could rise and fall, and you have no idea why Meta raised them or lowered them. Maybe it's a holiday. Maybe the auction is high. Or maybe Zuckerberg just needs to, make some extra money after whatever loss he just took. So I generally look at like my engagement stats, determine how like early indicators like CTR all, um, you know, CPCs, things like that can actually really move the needle. And my determinations based on that rather than just like an inflated CPM.
Yeah. Yes. Sometimes it just feels like it's such a big metric, and it's better to focus on things that are more in your control when it comes to media buying. What's the biggest mistake you see media buyers making right now?
Right now, I think a lot of people are trying to figure out how to run media again. And I think the biggest mistake people are making right now is not really going all in on creative diversity. Like, get outside your comfort zone. Everybody has formats that they love, that they know work, that are easy for them to make, and you can do a ton of them. But you can't do that anymore. You have to uh, be original and stop stealing formats completely and, come up with something that's different. That's what's feeding the algorithm right now.
Yeah. What is a tool that you defend in a fight and that you can't live without?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm kind of a software junkie, so I'm always testing and trying new things. But probably the most consistent piece of software we've used so far is Leadspedia. I mean, it's the backbone of our entire business as far as lead distribution goes. Um, yeah, I would have to say that, or maybe Google Tag Manager. I mean, it's such a versatile tool, especially if you're not a developer. Um, we started using it for everything, even though we have on staff developers. That way, media buyers, myself included, don't have to bug them for small changes like updating pixels and stupid stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you. I'm not a developer either, but those tools that allow non-developers to basically feel like a developer are key in this industry. What is the hottest take most people would disagree with?
AI will not save you. I think that right now everybody's leaning so hard on it that it's losing originality. You know, people hate AI slop. If you're going to use it, it has to be done right.
Yeah,
And if you're using it the right copy, you know, people can tell if it's a human that wrote it. So I think that, yeah, it's great for ideation for your copy, but I would never just take exactly what they gave me and run that. And I see a lot of people doing that, and I think that's hurting a lot of performance.
100%. What is one guest you'd be starstruck to have on this podcast?
Uh, Probably Billie Jean. You know, when he's an OG, been in the space forever. Uh, Honestly, he got me into the space. I bought his course 12 years ago, and that's really what kind of started my career. Was getting going through his course and trying to start my own agency. And 12 years later, here I am. So it'd be cool to go full circle.
Okay. Amazing. My last question for you is what's something that you think everyone experiences but isn't really talked about a lot?
Uh, I think the losses. Everybody goes through their slumps. You're not going to win all the time, but if you're watching YouTube or TikTok or any of these platforms, everybody seems to be winning all the time. Everybody's making tens of thousands of dollars a month and working 20 hours a week. It's just not true. Most of the guys that I know that make big money, they're putting the time in.
Yeah.
They grind. Just like anything else, you get out what you put in.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. Thank you. So, our podcast is going to be all about interviewing industry experts. We want to share those tips and tricks to get you ahead of the game. We want to be able to.
Exactly. So we'll be bringing on guests from our network that have been in the affiliate marketing space, performance marketing space, people that are running UGC influencer companies, all sorts of things. Just getting their takes, sharing some secrets. Maybe you hear one thing that changes how you run your campaigns, and that's the game changer. And that's what it's really all about. It's finding those golden nuggets, stacking them, and exploiting the system so you can make more money.
Exactly. So if you're a performance marketer, please subscribe to us. We're going to be on YouTube. We're going to be on Spotify and Apple Music. We'll be releasing episodes monthly. So please follow us and subscribe so that you can learn more about performance marketing from the experts in the industry. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon.
Awesome.